All right, that's Professor Alan Dershowitz, who joins us now. Hour 2, Sean Hannity Show, 800-941-SEAN, our toll-free telephone number if you want to be a part of the program. Professor, welcome back to the program. To what extent could Sessions actually get back in this, and in what regard?
He should get back in it. He's the Attorney General of the United States. He's in charge of all cases except those in which he is formally recused. Now, he's never recused himself, nor should he be recused from the investigations that are occurring, if they're occurring, in the Southern District of New York, because they all involve pre-presidential activities. They're not part of the Russia probe. He's not a potential subject of that. He's not a potential witness. And there's absolutely no reason why the Attorney General of the United States should relegate that part of his job to the Deputy Attorney General. They say they're separate. They're separate investigations. If they're separate investigations, he's not recused from the separate part of it in New York.
That's pretty fascinating and a new development. Let me ask a broad question about what you thought of Comey's interview. There were two things that really stood out in my mind. Issue number one, remember the Deputy FBI Director, Andrew McCabe, said without the dossier, the Steele dossier, there wouldn't have been a FISA warrant application. That's number one. Also, we know as it relates to the FISA application that there's certain laws, especially because you're talking about spying on Americans and approving a warrant to spy on an American. There are specific FBI protocols and specific laws as it relates to the representation of evidence in a FISA warrant application process. If James Comey today, last night, still does not know what the veracity and truthfulness and never corroborated what was in that, we now know Clinton bought and paid for dossier put together by a foreign national and using Russian sources. If they didn't verify it and if they didn't corroborate it and they allowed it to be presented before the FISA judge and they never told the judge, they knew who paid for it, but they didn't tell the judge who paid for it. Isn't that misrepresentation to a judge? I think it is. And I think that Stephanopoulos asked him that question very directly. Don't you think that the president had the right to know who paid for the dossier? The president, though, they didn't ask about the FISA court judge. Yeah, they got the FISA warrant 3 months before. Now, think about this. In January of 2017, Professor, James Comey told President-elect Trump that it was salacious and it was unverified. And he never told the president-elect the source. But in October, just weeks before the election, the FISA court was presented that dossier. The Grassley-Graham memo says the bulk of the application was the Steele dossier. And they presented it to the judge, and they didn't tell the judge where it came from, and they didn't verify what was in the dossier, most of which turned out to be false. Yeah, and is that a crime? When you have the director it is a problem. The director of the FBI himself saying today, I'm not sure it's possible. First of all, what is the director of the FBI going around peddling these kinds of salacious rumors on international television without knowing whether they're true or not? He could have just as easily said, I have seen no evidence in any way to validate the allegations, what I call the leak, the stuff about, beds and urination. I've seen no evidence to support that. And he should have said the same thing about other issues, whether the Russians have him over a barrel. He should have said, I have seen no evidence to support that, instead of saying, well, it's possible. Well, anything's possible. It's possible. Maybe it's not likely. I wouldn't have said it about another president, but I'm going to say it about him. No, he's just engaging in such speculation that's so unsuitable for a former director of the FBI who's supposed to go on facts. But yesterday it was very, very disappointing to hear him speculate, and always the speculation is against the president. Can I dig deeper inside your legal mind for a better answer on that in this sense? Because you're right. Comey set a new standard. It might be possible. The problem is that was the very information, the bulk of information, according to the Grassley-Graham memo, that was used to obtain a FISA warrant to spy on an American citizen. And if they didn't verify it, which is mandated both by law and protocol, was a crime potentially committed there? Well, before we get to the crime, I just want all your listeners to ask themselves the question. If somebody was trying to intrude into your most personal computers, your conversations with your doctor, your priest, your rabbi, your wife, your lawyer,
would it satisfy you to know that the criteria were, well, it might be possible. It's unlikely, but it might be possible, because that's the criteria that seems to have been used to get the FISA warrant. Now, whether that's a crime, as you know, I don't like to make things crime unless they're clearly established by the criminal law, but it's certainly worthy of much further investigation.
Let me ask the question another way, because you're so good at, you're such a good criminal defense attorney. Everything in your mind works its way through the prism of how do you defend this, on all sides, by the way, not just one side. But if you were the person that was being spied on and you found out that the FBI presented to the court unverified, uncorroborated, and now even some proven true information that was the basis of their application to get that warrant against you, and it was done by, say, an arch enemy of yours, and they never told the court that it was tainted by prejudice in that way. I have a funny feeling Alan Dershowitz, the person, would go apoplectic about the violation of civil liberties based on unverified information.
Of course, and so would the ACLU if the person who was being targeted was Hillary Clinton or a liberal Democrat. But if it's,
but you're consistent. You would do it for anybody.
Yeah. It's so disappointing, because I thought well of Comey. I met him a few times. He came to Harvard. He spoke in classes. He speaks very well. He made a generally good impression, I thought, yesterday. But the thing that most stood out for me is his lack of courage. Here's a man who's supposed to be the chief law enforcement officer, and he's hiding behind a curtain, trying to get his blue suit to match the curtain so he doesn't have to confront the president. The president says, will you be loyal? He says, I'll be loyally honest, or honestly loyal. And now, in front of the television cameras, he's perfectly prepared to stand up to the president because he's no longer working for him. But he had no courage, no guts. As I said this morning on Fox and Friends, when I speak to any president, whether it was Clinton, whether it be Obama, whether it be President Trump, any president, I tell them what I think. And that's why I think they value my insights. I'm not going to say yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, and be a yes man. And to have the head of the FBI not have the courage of his convictions, when he wants to talk to the New York Times, he leaks it through a law professor because he was afraid to confront journalists on his front lawn because they might be upset that he was giving it to one journalist rather than another journalist. Wow, that really takes courage to have to stand up to a couple of journalists and say, sorry, I gave it to the New York Times. Next time I'll give it to you.
I know how strongly you feel about the criminalization of political differences, but sometimes there are politicians that commit crimes.
Of course. I have no question about that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, for example, 18 U.S.C. 793 talks about the mishandling and destruction of classified top secret special access programming information. And that goes to the heart of the email server in a mom and pop shop that Hillary Clinton had put up that we now know that foreign intelligence agencies were able to hack into. And if I did that, I think I'd be in trouble. But more importantly, once those emails of hers were subpoenaed, and she deleted 33,000 of them, and then she blew out the hard drive by acid washing it with bleach bit, and then had her employees beating up her devices with hammers. And I don't think I'm making I'm not criminalizing a political difference here. I'm stating as fact. I think that if Sean Hannity did it, or Professor Dershowitz took subpoenaed information like this, and you acted that way, you would be in criminal trouble.
Well, I mean, the question is how many of those facts are actually provable beyond a reasonable doubt?
Everyone.
If they're all so true, why didn't career people in the Justice Department come to that conclusion? What happened in the end is that Comey announced that there was, serious negligence, but it didn't rise to the level where other people, in fact, have been prosecuted for this. There had been Republicans who also had email servers at home, but, if all your facts are correct about the acid washing and the destroying of that deserves being looked into, not by a special counsel. I don't like special counsel, but Justice Department, the State Department should be able to look into it through their
we expect the Inspector General report.
I'm not trying to whitewash anybody.
Well, then it gets into James Comey in May of 2016. He and Peter Strzok, who we know has a personal vendetta against the president, and we know they're the two that were writing the exoneration of Hillary. And they were writing it before they interviewed her or 17 other key witnesses. And to me, that's the exact opposite the way an investigation is supposed to go. We know that he originally, one of the original drafts, that he used the legal term as it relates to mishandling classified and extreme carelessness.
Let me give you the headline for today's show.
Yes, sir.
So what Comey said yesterday about how they conduct investigations is the best argument why Donald Trump should not have to testify. Because what he said was, we already knew the results of our investigation of Clinton. The only reason, basically, for questioning her is to see whether she's going to lie or not. That's called a perjury trap. And if they pursued the same investigatory tactics, they already know that Donald Trump is not guilty of any sort of collusion. They already know he's not guilty of obstruction of justice. And the only reason they want him to testify now is to put him in a perjury trap. So I think what Comey said yesterday, describing why they were able to write the exoneration letter and not wait until Hillary Clinton testified, is the perfect reason why Donald Trump doesn't have to now testify.
It's interesting. I don't think that that's going to happen. If you look under James Comey's watch, because he likes to hold himself up as kind of a holier-than-thou type of guy, but look what happened with his deputy director, 3 times lying, 2 times under oath. Look at all the people that have been demoted. Look at Bruce and Nellie Orr and their connection to Fusion GPS and meetings with Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS. Glenn Simpson admitted he never verified any of the information in the dossier. Nellie helped write that dossier working for Fusion GPS. Then you've got Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. And you got the Attorney General, this weird, ominous, whatever we don't know about Loretta Lynch comment that Comey makes. What did you make of that?
Well, I have to tell you that the best part of Comey's statement, the one I agreed with 100%, is he said he was against impeachment, that this is something the public ought to decide in the next election. And that's what I think generally, these issues, where they should be decided. They should be decided at the ballot box, not in the jury box. There should be investigations. No one is above the law. By the way, when people say no one is above the law, they forget that prosecutors can't be sued, judges can't be sued, senators and congressmen can't be prosecuted for what they do going to the Senate or being in the House of Representatives. So there are officials in our government that are not within the same rules of law that the rest of us are within. That doesn't put them above the law. That just says the law gives them special breathing room so that they can perform their function. The president, too, has that breathing room, which is why he can't be charged with obstruction of justice for simply performing his constitutionally authorized acts.
Let me just ask one thing. Where does this all end here, and what should the president be doing?
Well, the president, I don't believe, has much to worry about in terms of Mueller. I think Mueller will not find obstruction of justice. He will not find illegal acts relating to Russia. If he were to find any such charges, that would create a constitutional crisis, and the vast majority of Americans, I think, would stand behind the president on that. Where his real concerns should be focused is on his pre-presidential activities as a business person, or if he did settle any matters with women, he denies that. But that's where he doesn't get the kind of constitutional protection he gets under Article 2. And, Bill Clinton ultimately was impeached because of his testimony regarding something that happened before he was president. And his special counsel was investigating Whitewater, which happened before he was president. So it's the pre-presidential activities that should be focused on. And he should make sure he builds a very, very good legal team to protect his interest in the Southern District of New York and in front of the state attorney general, because the state attorney general, if there were ever to be charges there, the president can't pardon anybody. He has no control over the state legal system.
All right. We appreciate your time, Professor Alan Dershowitz. Thank